Uh, Brief as it is, this presentation aims at achieving four ambitious objectives. First, to assess the achievements of the CCL that we are celebrating today, its 30 years of its existence in the field of cross-cultural learning, the primary mission defined by its name. Second, to reflect on learning across cultures and across countries as an academic field and as a human experience that has thrived based on such tenets of liberal ideals as equality, freedom of opinion, peaceful coexistence, respect of differences, and intercultural dialogue. Third, the past 30 years have not witnessed successes only in this field, but also dangers that have threatened its course, ranging from wars to terrorism to pandemics, and most recently to the rise of illiberalism, the antipode of the founding ideals of cross-cultural learning. Fourth, the presentation suggests, as a response to the current challenge, a renewed emphasis on the concept of empathy as a form of resistance. 3 decades is a long time. It's a history by itself. We now realize that the center was founded only 6 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, in the midst of the euphoria celebrating the impressive victory of liberalism over its critics. Cross-national learning did exist prior to the fall of the wall, not only within the Western Bloc, but in the East as well. Thousands of students, mainly from third world countries, benefited from generous scholarships to study at universities in Eastern Europe, primarily in the Soviet Union. These programs were exclusively state-funded, prioritizing hard sciences and technical expertise. Their cultural dimensions were framed by Marxist ideas and left open to the daily life encounters. I haven't come across any study on this subject, but I am convinced that it is worth the attention of those interested in the history of diverse cross-cultural educational experiments. Tourism across the wall existed, across the Berlin Wall, existed as well, but remained highly constrained and underwatched. In Morocco, while study abroad existed prior to the fall of the wall, the number of international students in Morocco remained very small, and the programs were conducted by European state funding or by American organizations. National private organizations with no funding of any kind hardly existed in this field, and we are proud that the CCL is its pioneering model. Looking back at the evolution of cross-cultural learning in Morocco, one can distinguish between programs administered by the Moroccan state in the form of scholarships offered to international students to study in Morocco and to Moroccans to study abroad. Also, several foreign governments and organizations do provide scholarships to their nationals to study in Morocco and to finance hosting Moroccan students. These exchanges offer rich opportunities to learn from cross-cultural encounters as initially conceived by the funders. Again, I'm not aware of any work evaluating these initiatives. The focus of the CCL contribution in this field helps to highlight the characteristics of what I call liberal cross-cultural learning. Its foundations were laid out as a result of a rich reflections on the subject, targeting the political and social conflicts that arose mainly in North America, Canada included, of course. Now, we have to emphasize that Canada is also a part of America. Canada included, of course, represented by such influential thinkers in the field as Charles Taylor. As a result of the increasing cultural diversity of their societies due to the intensification of migration, but more importantly, to the upward social mobility of elites speaking in the name of the marginalized minority groups they identify with, and to liberal thinkers calling for the need to correct the economic and cultural biases that reinforce the privileges of the dominant majority cultural groups and discriminate against the rest. These conversations took place under the label of multiculturalism and sought to reconcile the liberal principle of equal individual freedoms and the provision of socio-economic conditions aiming at correcting the various forms of inequalities inherently embedded in liberal democratic institutions and societies. The results of this debate that took the form of discussions on issues confined to the nation states of the north, of northern countries, concerned prepared the grounds for, first in the US, for affirmative action, and developed later in what has been labeled as DEI policies, diversity, equity, and inclusion, that were greatly expanded since 2015 during the presidency of President Obama. DEI aimed at facilitating entry to jobs, universities, and services to marginalized groups. The effect of these initiatives on cross-cultural education was significant, not only in terms of the development of courses and curricula within American schools and universities, but of study abroad programs. The latter has traditionally benefited students from the majority groups, while minorities were hardly represented, as we witnessed at the CCL in the first 2 decades. Since then, increasing numbers of students of African, Latin, Latino, and Muslim origins started attending our programs and have carried with them the political cultural agendas that dominated the politics of their campuses, as Tayyip is well aware of these issues. The host country, therefore, this is us, became the site of debates over multiculturalism as conceived in the American context. That was one side of learning from studying abroad. The other was the relevance of these imported ideas to local political conversations and tensions, which has contributed to enlarging the perspective of multiculturalism from the confines of one nation state, mostly the US, to broader, diverse context. A major contribution to the Moroccan experience in this discussion was the daily lives, which provided the sites of representations of cultural diversity and struggles for recognition. Another was the state hybrid policies in the management of cultural tensions, which combined designing societal representations with bureaucratic supervision and limitations under the royal political umbrella. While the Moroccan model of multiculturalism is not the product of democratic institutions, open plural debates, and unrestricted confrontations of ideas, it is not illiberal nor anti-liberal, as it has been influenced and inspired by notions of human rights and liberal ideas, recognizing as legitimate the claims for recognition of diversity and respect of differences. The Moroccan experience provides an intriguing case of multicultural practice in a non-democratic setting that triggers both the curiosity and the questioning of the participants, whether young students or elderly travelers. Like other study abroad programs and educational tourism, the CCL has thrived under the hegemony of liberal optimism worldwide and the relative efficiency of the kingdom's pluralism. The fate of the business, however, remains dependent on demands originating mainly from American institutions that benefit from significant financial resources and holding on to liberal ideals. But these foundations became the target in the last 10 years or so of threatening attacks that came about with the rise of illiberal ideologies that are hostile to multiculturalism, resentful of cultural diversity, and fearful of migrants. Representing such forms of illiberalism are ideas embodying xenophobia, fanatic nationalism, and demands for border closing, the primacy of national material interests over international cooperation, militarist tendencies, and the neglect of human rights in discourse and in practice. The fate of cross-cultural and cross-national educations hangs upon the impact of these illiberal trends, not only on national politics and policies, but on specific educational programs, including those involving study abroad. The early signs are gloomy, but the outcome will not depend on the host institutions and countries like Morocco, or of the receiving organizations like the CCL. but on the outcome of the political confrontation between liberal and illiberal parties in the US particularly. From the receiving end, that is us, while we are mainly non-participant observers of the struggle, we have the moral and professional obligation to find ways of resisting the illiberal threat that menaces our mission. The 30 years of the CCL experience that has taught us that our most profound contribution in cross-cultural and cross-national education was and continues to be enhancing and strengthening empathy as a lived experience that transcends boundaries between peoples, willing to share their deeply entrenched humanist values with others. Empathy is not dependent on material resources, nor on academic qualifications and excellence, nor on any identity references, but on the personal will of anyone open to venturing and putting oneself in the position of the other, looking for the commonalities of human beings and ready to endure the discomfort of such ventures momentarily as a way to dissipate misunderstandings, miscommunication, and misrepresentations. Empathy turns out to be a form of resistance, a weapon of the weak, in our case, appropriate today for providing an alternative to illiberalism. And thank you all for your attention.